highways in order to make sure that there is no repetition of effort and that there is coordination. At such times, the highway should stay clear. As of now, the bus services that come to these areas have been completely shut down. Public transport in terms of buses and railways has been affected. Western Railway has already announced closure of several railways, cancellation of several railways passing from this area and coming here. So several measures are being taken at present in order to make sure that the damage due to the cyclone is minimized. As Gujarat's Home Minister told us yesterday that the instruction from the center is that there should be zero casualty and all the efforts should be geared towards that. That is why, even before the landfall of Cyclone Biparjoy, which is expected to happen today evening between Kutch and Karachi, we are seeing that a lot of measures have been put in place. In fact, home guards have also been appointed at several locations in order to spread awareness among people. The standing instruction to people is they should...
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's a pretty packed news day for a Thursday. China is gearing up for some high-profile visitors. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in the days ahead and Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates. What is he doing there? And why is Xi Jinping changing tack to woo business leaders? The answer may lie in China's economic data. We'll bring you the numbers and the inside story. In India, violence in the northeastern state of Manipur has intensified. And while the immediate trigger seems to be internal and needs an internal solution, there's also talk of a link to Myanmar. We'll discuss that. In the run-up to Prime Minister Modi's state visit to the US, defense deals look like they're on top of the agenda. Yesterday, we told you about drones. Tonight, we have details on a major jet engine deal. Also looking at why and how Indians are being targeted in college admission scams in Canada. Why President Macron of France wants an invite to the BRICS summit in August. Why Beyoncé is being held responsible for inflation in Sweden. And what is this new trend of desk yoga? The headlines first. Violence escalates in the Sudan. West Darfur's governor, Khamis Abakar, has been abducted and killed. He'd accused the paramilitary force, the RSF, of genocide. Sudan's army says the RSF is responsible for this murder. Russia wants to build an embassy near the Australian Parliament. Australia has blocked it, citing security risks. The Albanese government has passed laws to block the construction after the move failed in courts. Russia says it's seeking legal advice. Big win for America in the Pacific turf war with China. The US military will have quote-unquote unimpeded access to bases in Papua New Guinea. This is part of the security pact which was signed in May but has now been made public. Partygate continues to haunt Boris Johnson. A UK Parliament panel rules that as Prime Minister, he lied to MPs over parties during the pandemic. The panel said Johnson should have been suspended, but he's already resigned as an MP. In India, the Wrestling Federation president is charged with sexual harassment. The Delhi police have filed a charge sheet after allegations by the country's top wrestlers. In April, some wrestlers began a sit-in protest in the capital to demand the arrest of Brij Bhushan Singh. And Twitter is sued for $250 million. 17 music publishers in the US accused Twitter of mass copyright infringement. The lawsuit says the platform encourages infringement for profit. We begin with developments from China. President Xi Jinping is looking at a busy weekend. He'll host U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, a very significant meeting that the world will be watching closely. But before that, Xi Jinping will have another visitor, Bill Gates, the co-founder of Microsoft. Gates is traveling to Beijing. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Now, had it been any other country, it may not have been such a big deal. Most world leaders regularly meet business titans. But Xi Jinping is not your regular leader. Also, this meeting is less about business and more about image correction. The Chinese president is in urgent need of that. The pandemic ruined whatever was left of his reputation. Then he shut himself away from the world and unleashed his wolf warriors. That isolation and offensive approach backfired, so now he's busy repairing the damage. Also, China's economy is in dire straits. Investments have dried up. Businesses are wary of operating in China. The country is increasingly seen as less welcoming. Repeated crackdowns and erratic policies are causing losses. Companies are moving out of China. And you know all of this. Well, so does the Chinese leadership. Hence the meeting with Bill Gates. It's expected to be a charm offensive to change the world's perception about China. But here's the thing about perception. It cannot be built or changed overnight. So one meeting may not be enough to restore trust. But it can be a significant start. And we'll tell you why. Bill Gates is already in China. He says this visit is about the Gates Foundation. That's his non-profit organization, the Gates Foundation. He'll see Xi Jinping on Friday in a one-on-one meeting. They've not shared the agenda, but the choice of Bill Gates is a well-thought-out one. He's revered in China as an entrepreneur. So this affair will get a lot of publicity. Official photographs are expected. Chinese mouthpieces are expected to amplify every detail of the meeting. They're already at it, in fact. Look at this post from Global Times. Bill Gates was warmly welcomed in China. He joins a stream of U.S. billionaires visiting China, even as U.S. continues to adopt a hostile approach. Classic Chinese propaganda, always playing the victim card. The West is hurting us, they say, but China is still open for business. That's their message. Slight problem, though. The world sees through it. The Chinese state is in crisis mode. In recent weeks, urgent meetings have been convened in Beijing. Senior Chinese officials are holding talks with business leaders and with economists. They want advice. China's technocrats are unable to revive the economy, so they're looking for ideas. The list of challenges is growing. Economic growth has slowed. It's fallen to its lowest levels in 40 years, 4 decades. Youth unemployment is at a record high, and the real estate sector has more or less collapsed. So Chinese officials took these problems to experts, and here's what they were told. Change your approach, make policy changes, and let the market decide what's best. Stop issuing diktats from Beijing. Xi Jinping seems to have got the message too, and he's signaling a shift away from draconian policies like zero COVID and aggressive crackdowns on businesses. There are also attempts to woo back foreign investors. Xi's lieutenants have been holding meetings too, the likes of Elon Musk and Tim Cook. They visited China recently. Last month, Musk met with the Chinese vice premier. The Tesla founder left with an assurance. Beijing told him that they'll continue to open up and create a better environment for his business. Apple CEO Tim Cook was told the same thing, that China will open up, and now it's the turn of Bill Gates. When he meets Xi Jinping tomorrow, Beijing is expected to stick to the same message. But you see, messages help only so much. If you don't walk the talk, it makes no difference. China's economic mess goes deep. Wooing foreign investors might not help beyond a point. Already, leading companies are under pressure. Look at what happened to the Volkswagen CEO. There was a shareholder meeting. Some activists turned up and they threw cake at the CEO.
Tortenwurf während der VW-Hauptversammlung.
What were these activists angry about? Volkswagen has a plant in Xinjiang, and the activists say the company uses forced Uyghur labor in Xinjiang. In fact, more companies are coming under pressure to move their business away from China, not just Xinjiang, but elsewhere too. They're decoupling from China. And China's economic situation is expected to accelerate this decoupling. The latest numbers are out, and they're not looking good. Production by factories has slowed in China. Growth in sales is weak and unemployment is rising. In the month of May, growth in the country's industrial output fell. In April, it expanded by 5.6%, but last month the growth was just 3.5%. Sales in the retail sector rose by 12.7%. The forecast, though, was more than 13%. So China has missed the growth target. Youth unemployment has crossed 20%, which is a record high. And this is not a temporary slump. There is a clear downward trend, one that cannot be reversed easily. Investors who were once bullish on China are having second thought. One of them is a man called Stanley Druckenmiller. He's one of the most successful hedge fund managers in the world. Before the pandemic, he was optimistic about China. Once he even described China as New York on crack. But now he has different thoughts. Let me tell you about his latest assessment on the Chinese economy, and I'm quoting, "Looking out 10 or 15 years, I just don't see it unless there's a change in power at the top. I think that's going to be a very undynamic economy." So this is a vote of no confidence, not just against the Chinese economy, but also against the Communist Party. And that's bad news for Xi Jinping. A strong economy sustains the Communist Party of China. Its legitimacy is tied to economic growth. As long as the people of China have economic security, they're less likely to question the party and its authority to rule the country. That is the unwritten contract, but it's now been appended. So there's discontent. People are unhappy about the lack of growth. Even Beijing's censors cannot hide this. Chinese factories are facing a surge in protests. As of May, at least 130 factory strikes were recorded in China. Workers went on protest. What were they angry about? The root cause is wages. They're not getting their money. Factory owners are unable to pay salaries. Either payments are delayed or workers are being laid off without any notice, without any severance pay. In some cases, workers were simply relocated. They were sent to remote areas. How does that help? Factory owners wanted these workers to leave. They didn't want to pay them, so they made their commute to work harder by forcing them to live in far-off places. It is cruel, but the factory owners themselves are helpless. They're not getting any new business. Recently, a survey was conducted. It was done by the government of China. Over 3,000 factories across the country were covered in this survey. They reported a decline in economic activity. They're getting fewer new orders. And this is an alarming situation because factories are the backbone of the Chinese economy. China was once called the workshop of the world. Now it's struggling. It's mulling extreme measures. Reports say a stimulus package is also being discussed. The plans are not final, though. But Beijing could push a range of measures. A dozen proposals are on the table, like tax breaks, more loans for small businesses, and lowering the cost of mortgages to boost real estate. China's central bank is taking action too. Today, they slashed borrowing costs. More decisions will be taken in the coming days, but experts are skeptical. They compare the stimulus packages to antibiotics. They might reduce the symptoms, but they'll not treat the underlying issues. What the Chinese economy needs at this point is a surgery. It cannot be fixed with high-profile photo ops. Now to the biggest story from India, the violence in Manipur. I'm sure you've seen the pictures, houses on fire, gun battles, ethnic clashes. It's been a really worrying couple of weeks. And on Tuesday, things escalated even more. 9 people were shot dead in the village of Aijiang. Take a look at this map. It is located in southern Manipur. It's also very close to the Myanmar border. Why is that important? Because some groups are pointing fingers across the border. They say militants from Myanmar were behind this attack. Now, this is a very complicated issue. The violence itself is internal, but the fear is that outside elements could hijack it, that insurgents could feed on the fear. So let's look at the fundamental issues here. How did the violence start? What is the threat from Myanmar and how serious is it? To understand the violence, you must know Manipur's demography. 2 groups are important here. The Meitei community, which lives in the valley, and the Kukis, who live on the hills. Meiteis make up around 53% of the state's population. The Kuki community is around 28%. Now, these are numbers from the year 2011, more than a decade old. We don't know how they've changed in the years since. The Meiteis have generally dominated state politics in Manipur. All except 2 chief ministers have been from this community. The Kukis are a scheduled tribe, ST. Their land and culture is protected by the Constitution of India. They also have quotas for jobs. But the Meitei community does not have the ST tag, and that is the root cause of this conflict. Because Meiteis want to be declared a scheduled tribe. They claim their numbers have fallen. Their language is under threat, and their ancestral land is being taken away. The Kuki community disagrees. In the month of March, the Manipur High Court got involved. It asked the state government to recommend ST status for Métis. That's when all hell broke loose. Tribal groups took out marches across the state. There was arson and shooting. So far, around 116 people have died. More than 1,700 houses have been burned down and around 40,000 people have been displaced. India's Home Minister Amit Shah visited the state this month. The Indian Army is also on the job. Yet the violence refuses to die down. The clashes on Tuesday were the biggest since May. Houses were set on fire. There was gunfighting on the streets, and in the end, 9 people died. Reports say they belong to the Métis community. So that answers the first question. How did the violence erupt? Now to the second one. What is this threat from Myanmar? Let's pull up that map again. Manipur and Myanmar share a border, a 400-kilometer-long border. It's very porous. Less than 10% of that border is fenced, meaning it's very easy to cross. And this has led to 2 problems. Number one, there is a steady flow of refugees, especially after the coup in 2021 in Myanmar. Métis say that these refugees are close to Kukis and they're altering the state's demography. The other side, of course, denies this. The second problem is more insurgency. Each group had their own extremist sidekick, like the Kuki Revolutionary Army or the United National Liberation Front, UNLF, which is a Métis group. They used to be very powerful once. But today, these groups are based in Myanmar. The dense jungle near the border is a perfect place to hide. The current violence seems to have given them an opportunity, the perfect opportunity, a chance to reignite the insurgency. The state government already suspects that. They accused groups from Myanmar for the violence last month. So the question is this: what can be done now? The obvious option is to solidify the border. Home Minister Amit Shah did talk about it. He says efforts are underway to survey the entire frontier. Listen to this.
परमानेंट सॉल्यूशन के लिए हमने म्यांमार और मणिपुर की बॉर्डर पर पहले ही ट्रायल बेस पर 10 किलोमीटर बाड़ लगाने का, फेंसिंग करने का काम हमने पूरा कर लिया है और 80 किलोमीटर के काम को हमने टेंडरिंग कर चुके हैं और बाकी की बॉर्डर की हम सर्वे भी चालू कर रहे हैं.
Can India expect help from Myanmar? That seems unlikely right now. India does not support the military junta, although it does engage with them. India has called for a return to democracy in Myanmar. Plus, the Myanmar border area is dangerous terrain. It is not completely under the junta's control either. The government clearly has plans to contain the situation, but urgency is key. There is an internet ban in some parts of the state. There's also Section 144, a curfew. While the short-term solution is clearly internal, in the long term, India will have to deal with the Myanmar question. We're counting down to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state visit to the US. There's a lot on the schedule. The Prime Minister will attend a state dinner. He will also address the US Congress. There are events tailored for the cameras, very high on symbolism. But those may not be the high point of this trip. That could be a defense deal. The US and India are expected to sign an agreement on jet engines. Reports say it's close to the finish line. What exactly is in the deal? Well, 2 parties are involved, like in most deals. General Electric, which is a US multinational, and Hindustan Aeronauticals Limited, HAL, which is an Indian defense firm. The deal is basically joint production. GE will transfer technology to HAL. HAL will then produce the engines in India. They could be used on the homegrown Tejas jet. But what's in it for both sides? For India, of course, the gains are tangible. Your domestic defense industry gets a big boost, which means more jobs, more cutting-edge technology. India can replace its aging fleet of jets. And what's in it for the Americans? Well, a defense deal with India. The US has been trying to reduce India's dependence on Russian arms. Historically, most Indian equipment has been Soviet or Russian. So this is a big change. Washington will see it as a sign of deepening relationship. Now, to be clear, this is a major shift for both countries. In the past, the US has refused to share critical technology with India, like GPS during the Kargil War. India needed it. The Americans refused. Same with nuclear submarines. Washington repeatedly refused to help India. In the end, New Delhi had to turn to Russia for the subs. The jet engine falls in the same category. It is highly advanced and critical technology. Only 4 countries have aced it: the US, Russia, France and the UK. Even China buys jet engines from Russia. So sharing this technology requires jumping through a lot of hoops. The Commerce Department must clear it. The State Department must clear it. The Pentagon must clear it. And finally, the US Congress must approve it. Only then can jet engine technology be shared. Now, American officials seem confident that all of this will be done. In fact, that's one reason US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan visited India. He was in New Delhi this week. He spoke very specifically about removing obstacles to technology transfer. Listen to what he said.
As we look ahead to the state visit that Prime Minister Modi will be embarking upon in Washington next week, along with Ajit Doval and a significant delegation from India, a number of the deliverables at that visit are not just bullet points on a page. They are fundamentally designed to remove those obstacles in defense trade, in high-tech trade, in investment in each of our countries, in taking away obstacles that have stood in the way of better collaboration among our scientists and researchers.
So I guess the old wariness is gone. The US now wants to share critical tech with India. And it's not just engines, not just jet engines. Yesterday, we told you about a drone deal, how the US was urging India to clear it. New Delhi has done that now. The Defense Acquisition Council has given its approval. The deal is likely to be announced during the Prime Minister's trip. We don't have the specifics, but reports say 30 Predator drones for $3 billion. That's what India is looking at. What explains this American eagerness? This U-turn from the last decades. In 2 words, geopolitical realignment. The US needs India on 2 fronts. First, to contain the challenge from China, and second, to isolate Russia further. And that wasn't the case for most of the 20th century. And it's not just the US. Other Western countries are also joining in. Earlier this month, Germany struck a deal with India. ThyssenKrupp will jointly make submarines with India's Mazagon dock. All of this is good news. Relying heavily on one seller is not ideal for any country. In 2022, around 45% of India's arms came from Russia. 5 years back in 2017, this was 62%. So you can see the shift here. India has been gradually reducing Russian imports. The Ukraine war will likely speed that up because A, Russia's weapons deliveries have slowed down, and B, their effectiveness is in doubt. Having said that, let's be clear about Washington's endgame. It's not some noble effort to help India. It's a self-serving policy. So how should New Delhi plan this out? The ultimate goal should be self-reliance, to build these critical technologies yourself. Until then, such defense deals are a big help. They will boost India's domestic production. They will also help us prepare for the China challenge. 7.7 lakh. That's how many Indian students went abroad to study last year. It was a 6-year high, also a 68% rise since 2021. There is no denying that these numbers are big, and they're not surprising either. The aspiration of studying abroad is ubiquitous in India. Whether we like it or not, it's a lifelong dream for millions. Many Indian families want to send their children to foreign colleges, and for this they make huge sacrifices sometimes. Many take big loans. Some even mortgage their homes or take loans against family jewelry because they see foreign education as a worthwhile investment. But what's the return on this investment? Well, that varies, and conditions apply. In the best case scenario, the students find jobs abroad and do well. In the worst case, they don't even find the college seat they paid for. And that's happening to some Indian students in Canada. And we'll come to that. But let me also first tell you about a third scenario. They finished their education abroad, they return to India, but they don't find a job here. I'll show you the numbers. This is between 2015 and 2019. Only 22% of the students who studied abroad and returned to India were able to secure a job. So almost 80% of those students who returned could not even land a job. So foreign education can be a tricky investment. Which brings me to the story from Canada. Hundreds of Indian students have been left in the lurch. They began their overseas degrees in 2017 and 2018. By March this year, many of them had graduated. Some even got work permits. So they applied for permanent residency in Canada to become legal residents in the country, in Canada, and to work there. But instead of residency, they got letters of deportation. Do you know why? Because their college acceptance letters were fake. They may not have been aware of this, but all this while, they were illegal immigrants in Canada. What do you think happened here? The students had been scammed. They'd fallen prey to a fraudulent education counselor in Punjab. They were given fake admission letters in exchange for exorbitant fees. The students said they were wronged, so they protested for days. And now they've finally received temporary relief. The government of Canada has decided to not deport the Indian students just yet.
International students who are genuine applicants that came to Canada to study and were victimized by fraudsters will be given permission to remain in Canada. Those who were complicit in a fraudulent scheme will be held accountable for their actions and will bear the full consequences of Canadian law for their illicit behavior.
A task force has been formed to look into each case, so some students may get relief. But this episode highlights a much larger problem, a big crack in the system. It wasn't just the students who were fooled. It was also the visa officials and the Border Services Agency. And this may be a big conspiracy, but it's not a unique one. Such scams are more common than you would imagine. So-called education counselors routinely lure students abroad. They charge a hefty fee worth tens of thousands of dollars, and in return, they offer fake papers in substandard colleges. And yet students approach them. They want to take the risk. Why do you think that happens? For multiple reasons. There is no dearth of world-class education in India, but getting admission is tough. India's top universities are excruciatingly competitive. Cut-off entry marks easily hit 99%. So what happens to the other students? Where do they go? In some cases, education is not even the primary goal. A foreign degree is seen as a pathway to migration. And you can blame India's job market for that. Unemployment topped 8% in the month of April in India. Graduate unemployment is even higher, about 18%. A study says 83% of Indian students believe an overseas degree will give them an edge, that it will enhance their prospects for securing a better job. So today, Indian students study across the world, Canada, Australia, the UK, the US, and these are their top choices. And Canada ranks first because it's also the cheapest of these. The quality of education is comparable, there is no language barrier, and tuition fee is lower than other Western players. So Indian students flock to Canada, and fraudulent agencies exploit some of them. As we track this latest case, we do hope it serves as an eye-opener for others who plan to apply. What's the most important economic grouping in the world? Would you say the G20? A group of 19 countries and the European Union. It represents almost all major economies in the world. But does it represent changing world realities? What about the G7? It's an old, rich nations club representing the global north, but no India, no China, no Russia. So can it really be called important in today's global landscape? Then we have BRICS, a group that represents over a quarter of the world's GDP, more than 40% of the world's population. Its members are Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now more countries want to join. Egypt has formally applied. Others from Asia, Africa, and Latin America are also in the queue. But now there's been a surprising knock on the BRICS door. France. President Emmanuel Macron wants a slice of the action. He wants an invite to the upcoming BRICS summit in South Africa in August. Here's why.
Does France want to join BRICS? Is Paris sending its love to the Organization of Developing Nations? Is this a sign that BRICS is entering the big leagues? While it's possible, it's still too soon to be sure. Here's what we know for certain. Yesterday, French media reported that Emmanuel Macron had a request. He wanted South African President Cyril Ramaphosa to invite him to the upcoming BRICS summit. The 15th annual BRICS summit is taking place between the 22nd and 24th of August. It's being held in the South African city of Johannesburg. Leaders from the 5 BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, will be present. We're talking about presidents and prime ministers. Along with these 5 nations, there will be other guests, the Friends of BRICS as they're called. Bangladesh, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates and Indonesia have all been invited, as have some other nations. Many are hopeful about becoming members. Reports say some 14 countries have applied to join the grouping. The latest application is from Egypt, and some Egyptian corporations are excited by the prospect.
It's absolutely one of the main assets that we can take advantage of by joining BRICS and by joining the new development bank. We need to facilitate our trade, whether in import and export. And one of the things that hinders this supply chain and this process is the availability of foreign currency.
Egypt may have a leg up on the competition when it comes to joining BRICS. You see, the BRICS nations have a bank, the New Development Bank, headquartered in Shanghai. There are 4 non-BRICS members: Bangladesh, Egypt, the UAE and Uruguay. Bangladesh expects to be given membership in August. Egypt will be hoping for it too. It'll mark a new phase in BRICS. So far, the group has only allowed one country to join after its formation, South Africa, which joined in 2011. BRICS doesn't really have a proper mechanism to induct new members, but they're working on it.
Looking at institutional development of BRICS or expansion, we have concluded that we haven't as yet got what we believe is a useful document that we could place before the heads of state. So more work will need to be done on this matter. It is still to be processed, and once we have a document that we believe offers clear guidance, we will then take that to the summit in August.
And the group does seem keen to expand, especially in light of the war in Ukraine and the resultant sanctions on Russia. BRICS member countries want to get together and find a common currency they can trade in, find a way to bypass the US dollar. That's part of what's fueling the expansion. Another reason is the need for economic development. While the West is focusing on the war, the eradication of poverty seems to have been left by the wayside.
I believe the enlargement of the BRICS will be beneficial to the BRICS countries, beneficial to developing countries, and to increase the representation influence of this mechanism, and also to garner bigger power of the BRICS to serve the interests of developing countries and emerging market economies, as well as the international development cause.
China is definitely pushing for the expansion of BRICS. It's another way that Beijing can increase its global footprint, another forum where China can help steer the agenda. Which brings us back to France. Macron went to China in April. He wanted Europe to follow a course independent of the US. He wanted to maintain good relations with Beijing, especially when it came to trade. Is the BRICS summit just another platform for Macron to peddle his politics? Or is it something even more underhanded? Russia has asked France to explain Macron's invite. Moscow asked if it's some sort of Trojan horse move. While we wait for the reply from Paris, one thing is certain. BRICS is increasingly becoming a crucial platform on the world stage.
Can one person make a difference? It's not some philosophical question. I mean it. We live in the era of mega celebrities. It's not like before, when information took weeks to filter down. You tweet and the world knows instantly. So yes, one person can make a big difference nowadays. The question is how big? Let's look at some recent examples. You've probably heard about Lionel Messi's big move. He's quit the French club PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. He's now going to play for Inter Miami in the United States. And this move has arguably changed American football. Inter Miami had 1 million Instagram followers before Messi. Now, more than 8 million. Ticket prices are also through the roof. Before Messi, the cheapest ticket was around $29. In 24 hours, that shot up to $329. That's a 1,000% rise in prices. The biggest increase was for Miami's match against New York. If all goes to plan, it will be Messi's first game in the Big Apple. Guess how much those tickets are going for? More than $450. A 1,200% rise in prices. And this is all down to one player joining the club. Let's also look at the merchandise. Reports say Adidas will sell 2 million Miami jerseys this year. The club will get $45 million from that. Fun fact, $45 million is 2 times their annual revenue. Imagine that. All of this is happening before Messi set foot in Miami. You can guess what will happen afterwards. But Messi is not alone. Another star is shaking the economy in Sweden. Beyoncé held a concert there in the month of May. Around 46,000 people attended the event. She's now being blamed for the country's stubborn inflation. It was 10.5% in April. In the month of May, it actually came down to 9.7%. But economists noted something strange. Food and electricity prices had fallen last month, but hotel and restaurant bills went up. The reason? Beyoncé, apparently. Hotel rates were jacked up due to the demand from concert goers. This economist has even done the math. He says Beyoncé raised the inflation by 0.2 to 0.3%. I can give you more such examples. Michael Jordan, the NBA legend, he has an exclusive deal with Nike. You may have heard about their Air Jordan line of shoes. Air Jordan sales are around $5 billion. Nike's total footwear sales around $30 billion. So 16% of the revenue comes from one athlete's brand, and that too a retired athlete. What do these examples tell you? Brand value is the most important currency today. It's not just quality that sells, it's also association with big names. And athletes know this. Just look at David Beckham, arguably one of the most famous footballers. He keeps minting money even after retirement. How does he do it? By using his brand. Qatar roped him in to endorse the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Guess how much they paid him? $177 million. Today's deals are not just about salaries and one-time payments. It's much more complicated than that. Let's stick to Beckham. Like Messi, he joined a US club in 2007. His contract had an interesting clause. Beckham could purchase a new US football club for $25 million. He used that clause in the year 2014, and that team is Inter Miami. Guess how much it's worth today? More than $600 million. Messi's deal is also set to include clauses like this one. He could get revenue from jersey sales, also from Apple TV, which streams football in the US. Like I said, it's not just wages and salaries anymore, it's a cocktail of things. But all of it boils down to brand. Not every footballer can set terms like Messi or Beckham. Not every singer can jack up prices like Beyoncé. It has to be matched by pedigree and popularity. It also means more responsibility. If they can shake economies, you can imagine their control over fans. It's important for these figures to set the right example, to talk about the right causes. If not, people will remember their contracts, but not their contribution. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, the economy is collapsing, and the politics is making it worse. This is a country of about 5 million people located in West Asia, and it's facing a major crisis. Lebanon does not have a president. It doesn't even have a proper government. Not for want of trying, though, because the lawmakers have tried repeatedly. Yesterday, they made their 12th attempt and failed. I'll repeat that. They could not appoint a president after 12 attempts. It's been 7.5 months of utter chaos. The country is running on autopilot, and it's heading straight towards a crash. Our next report has the details.
There was yet another standoff in the Lebanese parliament yesterday, a vote to select the president. Sadly, this wasn't any pivotal moment. It has become all too common. This was the 12th attempt to select a president, the 12th vote in 7.5 months. And just like the 11 times before this, the vote failed once again. Before we get into why, let's look at the contenders. One candidate was Suleiman Frange. He's the grandson of a former president with whom he shares his name. He also served as Lebanon's Minister of Interior and Municipalities between 2004 and 2005. His opponent was Jihad Azur. He's a former finance minister of Lebanon, having served in the role from 2005 to 2008. He's also an alumni of the International Monetary Fund. He became the IMF Director of the Middle East and Central Asia Department in 2017. Azur seems to check the boxes when it comes to becoming Lebanon's president. He's an economic expert and that's essential when considering the crisis consuming Lebanon. The country's economy has been crumbling since 2019. The exchange rate used to be about 1,500 Lebanese pounds to the dollar. Today, that rate is over 15,000 pounds to the dollar, a tenfold decrease in value. But this isn't the only problem. In 2020, an explosion ripped through the main port in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Over 200 people died and more than 300,000 were left homeless. Damages amounted to billions of dollars. Between all this and the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine, Lebanon lies at the brink of collapse. So you'd think the politicians would get on with it and select a president. Either the political family's scion or the economic expert. Anything would be better than the present stalemate, right? Not quite. This brings us to why Lebanon faces its power vacuum. Politics. Lebanon's parliament is divided. The group calling the shots seems to be Hezbollah. It has been designated a terrorist organization by a lot of countries, but is backed by Iran. And it's a strong political party in Lebanon. Hezbollah dislikes the economist candidate Jihad Azur. Hezbollah and its allies voted for Suleiman Frangi. Almost everyone else wanted Azur. This was the result.
Suleiman Firange 51, Jihad Azur 59, Ziad Baroud 6, New Lebanon 8, Empty Ballot 1, Joseph Aoun 1, Annulled Paper 1. Total would be 127. There is one missing paper.
The Economist was ahead by 8 votes. A second round was supposed to be held. In the second round, Azur would have needed just 6 extra votes. If he hit 65, Azur would have become president. But that wasn't to be. Hezbollah and its allies staged a walkout. That meant Lebanon's parliament fell short of the minimum number of lawmakers needed to initiate a vote, leading to the 12th attempt to choose a president also failing. This has become such a routine affair that no one was surprised.
Of course, we knew this is how the session would go, since it was called for and they wanted to go ahead with it. They did not postpone it, but of course with no result. We were sure that more than 50% or 70%, we knew there will be no precedent. They will agree on a third candidate. There is no other way.
We are tired and no one is able to change anything. They either don't know how to change anything or they don't have the intention to. But the result is one. Lebanon and the Lebanese are the biggest losers.
She says Lebanon and the Lebanese are the biggest losers, a country and its people without leadership, heading for an economic collapse and more misery.
Get ready to bend backwards at work, and this time literally. And openly fall asleep in office. Just remember to do it in the Shavasana pose, because now you can give your regards to the Y break. I'm joking. But the Y break is no joke. It stands for a yoga break, and India's central government is urging its employees to take one, to do yoga at their office desks, to quote-unquote de-stress, refresh and refocus. After all, yoga has the power to calm the mind and strengthen the body. For thousands of years, it has hooked practitioners around the world because yoga is for everyone, the young and the old, the overweight and the fit. And apparently, Indian government employees too. Here's a report.
This is BKS Iyengar, a world-renowned yoga exponent. It's understood that his last words were, "I have lived a majestic life." Majestic. You may agree that this adjective can easily be used to describe him. Just look at his photos. He is grey-haired and bendy-bodied. So observing these pictures may affect you in 2 ways. At first, his scary suppleness is awe-inspiring, but this feeling is soon followed by despair, oozing out of most people who can't even touch their own toes. But it's not too late, because that's the beauty of yoga. It is for everyone to do, and anyone can start at any age. Now, the expectation isn't to perform Cirque du Soleil acts. Even simple yoga at one's office desk can do the trick. And that's exactly what the government of India is urging people to do. The center has asked its employees to take a Y break. It stands for a yoga break, so employees can do yoga at the workplace. And the center has suggestions too, some light practices which only require a few minutes of break from work, like the ones you see in these visuals. The protocol compromises of asanas or postures, pranayama or breathing techniques, and dhyana or meditation. These techniques originated in India over 5,000 years ago, but today millions across the world practice them. Simply because yoga really is as healthy as people say. It requires little to no equipment. It can be accessible to nearly everyone. And it's linked to wide-ranging health benefits. Yoga reduces stress and body pain. It improves sleep and cognition. Research also suggests that it improves balance, strength, and flexibility. A study says that practicing yoga can help reduce fatigue in cancer patients. It can even cut the risk of the disease spreading. But that's not all. Yoga also offers wide-ranging mental health benefits. It reduces anxiety and stress and elevates one's mood. Why? Because of the mind-body connection. Yoga is an intentional practice. It requires focus from both mind and body. While exercising, like jogging, people often distract their minds on purpose. That isn't the case with yoga, and this is what makes it an enigma of benefits. This is crucial in today's day and age. Office goers complain of backaches from sitting at desks, or chronic wrist pain from typing away day on day. These problems even have fancy names. Have you heard of the office syndrome? It refers to the inflammation of neck, shoulder, and back muscles. A study says that 8 in 10 office goers suffer from such pain. Our work life is grueling and, ironically, sedentary at the same time. Thus far, our office desks have witnessed clawed fingers clacking away at keyboards, stacks of paper, and stashes of coffee mugs. But now they can witness something completely different, something healthy, which can save us from daily stress and physical pain. And the solution is simply a few minutes of yoga, right here at our desks. But if you don't know where to begin, we have a tip. Why not start with laughing yoga, directed at your boss's jokes? After all, it could have unexpected benefits.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with India. A fire broke out at an educational institute in the national capital, New Delhi. Students climbed down the building using wires. Meanwhile, an overcrowded migrant boat capsized and sank near a coastal town of Greece. At least 79 people drowned. Some migrants were rescued by helicopter. And in Peru, a 3,000-year-old mummy has been found. Archaeologists say this could be a case of human sacrifice. Finally, what makes the 15th of June significant? We're taking you back in history. On this day in 2001, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or the SCO, was founded. It was a successor of Shanghai 5, which was founded in 1996. The aim of the SCO was to focus on regional security issues. India became an observer in 2005 and a full member in 2017. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Aquí ya me dio uno. Está bastante erosionado, ¿no?
protocols which have been put in place in order to make sure that hospitals keep functioning even when there is electricity outage, and there is enough blood supply to several hospitals. These are the several measures that have been put in place, not just in Dwarka, Devbhoomi Dwarka, where I'm standing right now, but in several locations including Kutch, Mandvi, areas around Porbandar, also several places in Jamnagar which are low-lying and which received rainfall yesterday and day before have been kept on standby. So massive deployment that has taken place in several locations here. The NDRF has said that it is constantly watching over the situation and staying in touch with the district administration, which is coordinating efforts for making sure that there are no untoward incidents even as Cyclone Biparjoy makes its headway, even as it comes closer to the coast of Kutch, and as the climatic condition worsens here, not just in Dwarka but around Porbandar, Mandvi and Kutch area as well. So Saurashtra and Kutch have been put on red alert since yesterday. Other places are on orange alert, and rainfall is expected today. The wind speed is expected to continue to surge over the next few hours. In Devbhoomi Dwarka itself, where I'm standing, the speed of wind has increased as compared to yesterday, though right now for a few moments we can see that there is a dip, but it is expected that the climatic situation will only worsen in the coming few hours before Cyclone Biparjoy makes a landfall by today evening at around 7 p.m. There was some rainfall that was happening till a while ago, but right now there is respite.
Well, CNN News 18's Vinay Deshpande is joining me live from Dwarka in Gujarat, and she is going to bring you all the latest developments from Ground Zero. Vinay, I hope you are safe there. Could you give us all the details from Ground Zero? Also, could you tell us about the key areas that are going to be affected apart from Gujarat?
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jambal. Breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin, where an assurance from the Sports Ministry has led to the Delhi police to request the government to cancel the FIRs registered against the wrestlers. Remember, FIRs were registered against the wrestlers as they were protesting on the day the new parliament was inaugurated. They were booked for rioting, and what we are learning is that after the assurance from the central government when it comes to the withdrawal of those FIRs, the Delhi police has now sent a request to the government for the cancellation of the FIRs registered against the wrestlers. So that's the piece of breaking news that's coming in. Remember, the FIR was registered for rioting and under other sections as well. They were booked under multiple sections. And after the government's approval, the FIR against the wrestlers will finally be withdrawn now. The FIR was registered on the day of the inauguration of the new parliament when the wrestlers staged demonstrations. Those visuals on your screen. I'm joined by my colleague Anvit on the phone line, who's getting us this piece of breaking news. Anvit, give us the details.
Yeah, Ishwan, the latest that we are learning is that Delhi police have written to, in fact, is in the process of writing to the government to get an approval for quashing the FIR that was registered against wrestlers. Now, this had happened on 28th when the new parliament was inaugurated, and at the same time, just meters away from the new parliament, the wrestlers were at protest. They had been demonstrating for past some time, and they had also threatened a day before the parliament's inauguration that they'd be marching up to the parliament for their demands. Now, on that day when they started their march, they were held back by the police. The entire area had to be barricaded, and the police presence was enhanced in that area. During that, when some clash happened between the wrestlers and the policemen, police had gone ahead and registered an FIR under sections of rioting and other sections against the wrestlers. Now, when the meeting happened later on, when Sports Minister Anurag Thakur, wrestlers had also put forward a demand that the FIR against them be quashed. And following that action, when Anurag Thakur had assured wrestlers that yes, the FIR against them will be quashed, this is a development in that manner that now Delhi police has moved a file seeking permission from the government to withdraw all the charges that were raised against the wrestlers, including rioting on that day following the incident that had happened.
Right. Thank you, Anvit, for getting us that piece of breaking news. Shifting focus to some breaking news that's coming in from Jammu and Kashmir. Now, in a major development to counter narco-terrorism, Jammu and Kashmir Police has decided to constitute district-level task forces. The task forces will deal with the narco cases and will review them on a monthly basis. The task force police will identify known and suspected drug traders in border areas, namely links to Pakistani drug smugglers. So this is a huge crackdown coming in on narco-terrorism, ladies and gentlemen, in Jammu and Kashmir. And this is the plan that is being put forward by the J&K administration. I'm joined by my colleague Ishan Wani on the phone line, who's getting us this piece of breaking news. Ishan, give us the details.
Well, yes, government, particularly the police, has decided that there are multiple checks that they need to do. One, that this is a major threat, drugs, to the socio-economic structure of Jammu and Kashmir. And there have been multiple ways that drugs has been flowing in. One, but through Pakistan, and then also, interstate drugs is also something that the government has been police has been making arrests from. Now, police will be establishing an ANTF secretariat in crime branch of J&K, which will be headed by a DIG rank officer at the crime branch. Now, DGP recently had directed police officials to establish an intelligence cell, and that will help to gather and identify the gray areas where, gaps are needed to be plugged in. Essentially, wherever they're finding gaps, because drugs is something where also political parties have now started, gathering and holding discussions to pull youth out of these drugs. And that is why police has now stressed upon officers to devise a plan under which they'll be able to have a record of drug addicts so that they could be able to pinpoint the source of supply in those areas, districts at a very small level. Now, police will also constitute a district-level task force to deal with narco cases and also, review these cases every month because they want a watertight case against those who are supplying these drugs to the youngsters. They have also been told that it's important to attach the properties of those who have been able to build wealth by selling drugs to youngsters. So that is also something on cars that we'll see. We have already seen one of these incidents taking place in Bandipur where the attachment was done of a property which allegedly was built by a person using the narco money. So yes, police will identify and try to see that where these smuggling is taking place from in the border areas, and subsequently they want to take action against them because now also you're seeing there's a pressure building on police as well, that the civil societies and political parties are also wanting police to take action, and that is why there's an important these meetings have been held by the police, but they have decided to actually establish a secretariat where they will be able to monitor it at a very small level so that they could end the narco terror and also at the same time see that where these border areas gaps can be plugged in.
Right. Thank you, Ishan, for getting us that piece of breaking news. So a crackdown on narco-terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, where the J&K police has now formed special teams to crack down on narco-terror, namely in the border areas. Getting some more breaking news, another flashpoint between the governor and the government of Tamil Nadu, ladies and gentlemen. Chief Minister M.K. Stalin has sent a letter to the governor regarding the reallocation of Senthil Balaji's portfolios owing to ill health. But the governor has returned the letter, calling it incorrect and misleading. Remember, this comes after the arrest of Senthil Balaji by the Enforcement Directorate. Another flashpoint between the governor and the government of Tamil Nadu, this time over Senthil Balaji's portfolios. I'm joined by my colleague Purnima on the phone line. Purnima, give us the details. Another fight between the governor and the government in Tamil Nadu.
Absolutely. Yet another war of words exchanged between Governor R.N. Ravi and the state government. This time after the state government had recommended the reallocation of portfolios that Senthil Balaji had. One was excise and prohibition portfolio and the other was electricity. And in its recommendation, the state government cited his health reasons for the reason why they are reallocating his portfolio. But now the DMK held a press conference and said that the governor had returned the letter and called the information in that as misleading and incorrect, saying that he will not accept the recommendations of the government. Meanwhile, the Tamil Nadu government has said that they will now decide on the next course of action, but also said that the governor had already on the 30 had already told the chief minister or written to the chief minister ordering that Senthil Balaji be removed from the cabinet till the probe is over by the enforcement directorate. And this happened when chief minister had returned from Japan. A letter was sent by the governor, but chief minister had said that this will set a wrong example and that he will not remove Senthil Balaji from the cabinet. And days after that, when the ED raids happened and arrests have been made and he's been sent to judicial custody, now the reallocation of portfolios is something the state government had recommended, but governor did not approve it. So yet another instance where the war of words escalating between the ruling DMK and the governor.
Right, and at the same time, Purnima, when it comes to this move by the governor, the DMK once again will only escalate the war against the BJP. They in the past have called the governor R.N. Ravi a puppet of the central government, even saying that what's happened to Senthil Balaji is nothing more than vendetta politics. And this fight is only going to escalate now.
Absolutely. Even in today's press conference that was held a short while ago, the DMK alleged and made a statement that Governor R.N. Ravi is acting as a BJP agent, and that's why he's not accepting the recommendations made by the government. When the government decides the portfolios and the allocation of portfolios, and governor has no role in deciding whether these portfolios can be reallocated or not. That's the statement that was made by the DMK, clearly saying that in every non-BJP ruled state, the governor is trying to act as an agent of the BJP, and that's the same statement that the DMK has made yet again, because both the government and the governor have been at loggerheads on several issues, and this is yet another instance where we can only see politics over the issue going to snowball as well.
Absolutely. Politics over this entire issue will only snowball. Thank you, Purnima, for getting us the latest when it comes to the face-off over Senthil Balaji's arrest by the Enforcement Directorate. But shifting focus, our big story of the day, Cyclone Biparjoy has made landfall in Gujarat, ladies and gentlemen, with heavy winds and rain pummeling the Gujarat coast. The IMD says landfall will be completed by tonight. The coastal districts of Saurashtra and Kutch are bearing the brunt of the cyclone's fury. The authorities have successfully relocated over 45,000 individuals from the coastal areas to temporary shelters. NDRF, SDRF, Army, Coast Guard and naval teams have been deployed. The Gujarat government has also established 24/7 control rooms to oversee all operations to tackle the fury of Cyclone Biparjoy.
As of now, heavy winds continue to lash Dwarka, where we are standing, and there are several incidents which have been reported due to the fury of the cyclone. As the landfall has begun, we have seen that several poles have come down, several single structures like walls, electricity poles, also metal constructions have all come clinging down. We have also seen that the tin roofs of several buildings have flown off, and as the wind speed continues to rise over the last few hours, it's expected to be like this in the coming few hours as well, till midnight. We are right at the seashore. It's too dark for us to show you the seashore, but the sea has been extremely scary and boiling for the last few hours. The waves have been quite high. They've been hitting on the shores. In fact, the sea, which is around 100 meters away from here, I can taste the salt water on my face, the salt water in my eyes, and I can see that the sand has been hitting us throughout this entire period. So, as we stand here to show you the visuals of destruction of Cyclone Biparjoy, it has been an increasing challenge to stay here and to bring on the live visuals, even as the wind speed has been growing on. Remember, at least 10,000 people from here, from Dwarka alone,